Hello, Namaskar, welcome to my pod, the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis. My name is Juggi Bhasin. What do you say of a country that first interferes in your internal affairs and then accuses you of a crime, accuses you of gangsterism, accuses you of extortion, and it doesn't stop at that? Then it goes on to say that give me proof of the acquisitions I have made. Sounds absolutely incredible, doesn't it? But this is exactly what Canada is doing to India. It seems to be a page out of a comic series which I used to read long back when I was a kid. It was called Ripley's Believe It or Not. These are about incredible occurrences in the world. And this, of course, is a very incredible occurrence. Here is a sovereign democratic country, Canada, accusing another sovereign democratic country. First, it interferes in the internal affairs, then it accuses India of a crime, and then says, give me evidence that I have accused you of this crime. What can you say about this, except that maybe it is some kind of a colonial mindset, a colonial hangover of Canada, that it is making these kind of accusations, or perhaps even worse, or perhaps even more sinister, it is what I call a white is right syndrome, which is at work here. I'm going to discuss all this in this podcast today, but before I do that, as always, I would urge all of you to subscribe to my channel, the CAA Show. Very simple, really. All you have to do is to press that red button on your screen. Subscription is, of course, completely free, and also would really appreciate if you could like the show and share this video with your friends. Now, there was something very interesting which happened yesterday besides all these accusations. The Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Justin Trudeau, appeared before what is called a Foreign Interference Commission in Canada. And I went through this entire 15 to 20 minute deposition which he made in front of that commission, and it is very interesting. I will give you the finer details of that deposition, but let's start from the beginning by telling you that he actually ended up, that is Mr. Justin Trudeau, ended up by indicting himself. This was a deposition where he actually was trying to, put India in a corner, but he ended up really exposing himself of what really he and his government are really up to. But let's go point by point over this deposition and see all the contradictions, all the falsehoods, all the prevarications which he has used to try and indict India. Well, he starts by saying, the first point which he makes is that he's talking of the time of the G20 summit, when he, as you remember, he came to India, that is last year. And he said that we could have made the G20 summit, I'm using his words, we could have made the G20 summit very uncomfortable for India if we had wanted to. We chose not to do that. Look at the tone and the tenor of what Justin Trudeau is saying. He is, in a sense, threatening India. He is, in a sense, trying to blackmail India. The context really is that he had so-called intelligence that India has committed this murder of Niger, and that he was withholding that information at the G20 summit. Otherwise, he could have spoiled the G20 summit for India. This is the imputation. This is the logic of this threat which he makes right in the beginning of the deposition. But that's not the only pearl of wisdom which he threw in the deposition. There are lots many more, and I'll go over them one by one. Then he says that Trudeau says in the deposition, he says that there was pressure on him from the South Asian community to do something about the Niger killing. In translation, the South Asian community which he is talking about are the pro-Khalistani groups. So he acknowledges that it was because of pressure of the South Asian community, that is the pro-Khalistani groups, that the so-called intelligence operation was mounted, which literally means that they found nothing extraordinary in the Niger killing. They all probably knew it was a gang-related killing, but because because of the pressure from the pro-Khalistani groups, they mounted this falsified kind of an intelligence operation, this kind of a scam intelligence operation, I would even call it, to corner India. He acknowledges that in his deposition. And then he goes on to say the most quotable line of that deposition, which I think is now making world headlines, where he says, and I repeat and I'm quoting him, that this intelligence, that the Niger killing, about the Niger killing, it was primarily intelligence, not hard evidentiary proof. And there lies the rub, there lies the real message, there lies the real story in this entire imbroglio, as it is called, that they only had so-called intelligence, and as I have proved to you, the intelligence was started by pressure from the pro-Khalistani groups that do something about it, indict India. So they started this so-called intelligence operation, but he acknowledges that there is no hard evidence, no hard evidentiary proof, to quote him. And that should tell you the entire story. But again, I want to go over this point by point and bring facts to you, that what exactly is Mr. Trudeau and his government really up to. And please also remember, along with this, there were these reports coming in, there were these media, these videos which are coming in of pliable Canadian pro-Trudeau journalists. And I remember one particular report, one particular video, where that journalist was saying that the Canadian government probably has given wiretaps, it has given video documentary evidence that Indian officials, intelligence officials, diplomats have been talking about the Niger killing. Now, here's the thing. First of all, as he himself says, there is no evidentiary proof. But even by a stretch of the imagination, if one were to believe that there was some kind of proof, what could that proof be? Wiretaps. We know wiretaps are illegal. Wiretaps can be manufactured. Wiretaps can be manipulated. Number two, same thing goes for video documentary evidence. But the other thing also is this. See, Niger is not exactly a loved figure in India. He is actually a designated terrorist according to India. Now, if we are talking about Niger, we are certainly not going to be talking about him in complimentary terms. Supposing you're sitting in a park, let's say in Canada, you are sitting, let's say, in the subway, or you're sitting in a shopping mall and you're discussing Niger, and you say, I wish somebody would bump off this fellow. I mean, you could be talking like that, okay, and somebody kind of, makes a video recording of it without you knowing about it. Now, does that become evidentiary proof? That's not even circumstantial proof. That is what we call common talk. But again, all that is supposedly, even if such a thing also exists, even that has not been given to the government. And right now, before I was doing this podcast, I was listening to an MEA, that is a Ministry of External Affairs briefing, where they categorically said that since 2023, last year, when all this this problem occurred or flared up, till then, till now, till this date, the Canadian government has not given a shred of proof, backed these allegations by any kind of hard proof. And that, of course, then tells you the story. Then look at the other gems which come out of this deposition. Trudeau then says to the presenter, and he says that he offered to the Indian government, and he's now referring to this conversation which we had with Modi, where he says, Trudeau says, I quote, "Let us work together and look into your security services." I mean, it is astonishing. I have never heard of anything like this, where Trudeau is telling the fourth largest economy in the world, probably the third biggest military power in the world, a middling country like Canada, is telling Modi that we are now prepared to look into your security services. Which country, not even a country like Belize, not even Seychelles, would allow you to look into their security services, and you are asking India that we want to look into your security services to gather proof against you? I mean, what kind of perverted logic, arguments are these of Mr. Trudeau and his government? It defies all sense, it defies all logic. But this is exactly what he has told Modi according to the deposition, in the deposition which he has said. And then listen to the other gem. Then he goes on to say, he tells Modi, that is Trudeau, that we are happy to work with India if they have any evidence against those who provoke against India. The context to this is that when he made that particular first statement that we want to look into your security services, so Modi probably said to him that, listen, the real issue is the Khalistanis who are creating problem for us in Canada. And in response to that, he says that if you have any evidence against those who provoke against India, give it to us. Now here is the diabolical, the arguments of Trudeau and his people. In both cases, in the first case, he's asking India that, oh, you have committed a crime. Now it is incumbent upon you to give evidence to us that you have committed that crime. In the second case also, where we are pointing out that the real issue are the separatists, the Khalistanis who are creating problems, who are creating all kinds of problems in Punjab and elsewhere. And in that case also, now you give evidence. In both cases, India has to give evidence to his lordship, Mr. Trudeau, to Canada, this country, this Justin Trudeau sitting on a high pedestal. We have to go and put this evidence at their feet so that they can judge for it and then decide that whether this is correct or not. I mean, what else is it except not a colonial mindset? Can any intelligent, reasonable person advance arguments like this? That's the other point. Then he says that we had clear indications that India had violated Canada's sovereignty. Look at the word he uses. And this is the exact word which he uses in the deposition. We had clear indications. Now, Mr. Trudeau, if you know the English language, the word indication or to indicate means literally to indicate. It is not hard proof. Indication could be maybe some kind of a direction. It could be some kind of a way which you are pointing that it could be leading towards that, but it is not hard proof. And by his own words, he says we had clear, within quotes, indications that India had violated Canada's sovereignty. You see, this is what happens to these so-called clever, these so-called dissemblers, I would say. They indict themselves, they make a fool of themselves, and in this deposition, Trudeau has from one sentence to the other, if you closely examine the syntax is called the construction of sentences, the syntax or the arguments of Mr. Trudeau, and you will see that in every sentence, he is contradicting himself. He is he's telling you that whatever India has been saying so far is correct, and what we have been so far saying are lies, and more lies and nothing else. And then Trudeau goes on then to describe the Indian government, which is the real low of lows, where he describes the Indian government in terms of extortion, murder, violent activities. He describes India in those terms. This is what he is trying to reduce India to demonize India to the level of the lowest of the lows, that they are involved in extortion, murder, violent activities. And then the clincher, the final argument in that deposition, which I think gives the entire game away, if you ask me. He says that one of the charges which he flings at India is that, the Indian diplomats were, within quotes, and I'm quoting his words, were withholding family visas. And then you realize what this entire issue is all about. What do you mean by withholding family visas? That, of course, is aligned with Jagmeet Singh, that separatist Khalistani, his minister, who now is not part of the government any longer. That Jagmeet Singh would have told him that, the Indian government is mounting pressure. They are cancelling PIO cards, persons of Indian origin cards. They are denying visas to our dear Khalistanis out here, to go back and forth within India, to spread unrest in India, then come back, enjoy holidays in India, then come back. They are withholding family visas, and that is the real concern of Justin Trudeau, because just Jagmeet Singh must have told him that. That is the real story which now emerges in the deposition. It's this family visas withholding which put the pressure on Jagmeet Singh, who in turn piled on the pressure on Justin Trudeau, who in turn then accused the Indian government, falsified this entire narrative to basically get out of a corner with Jagmeet Singh. That is the real story we need to understand. And then let's now flip this entire thing over and come to the real point. All this is, if you really ask me, as I said, this white is right syndrome. What else can you expect from countries like Canada? And to that extent, what else can you even expect from the Five Eyes countries, who have given a kind of a tepid support, I would say, to Canada? Not a full-throated support, but still a tepid support. They're not exactly, they are championing India's cause in this particular matter. What else can you expect from these countries? But what we really also need to do, let's talk a little bit about that also. I've talked about the hypocrisy. I've talked about the complete lies of Justin Trudeau and his government. But what really we also need to do is this. We have to flip the whole thing over in our conversations, in our narrative, whether it be to the Canadian government, whether it be to these Five Eyes governments, or to the United States, or to any other country who is interested in this matter. The first point we have to say is that this entire matter is not about nature. It is not about Pannu also. The entire matter is a simple matter, that there are these elements in countries like Canada and the United States and Britain. These people are advocating separatism in India. They are advocating that a chunk of India be taken out from India, carved out of India, to be created into a separate state. Now, which country in its right mind, especially a sovereign democratic country, will allow that? That is the only point we need to keep on hammering again and again in our conversation. Everything else takes a backseat. That's the first point. Number two, we have to raise the issue very strongly that the Khalistanis, and in a certain sense indirectly Justin Trudeau and his government, they are not only targeting the Indian High Commissioner in Canada and senior diplomatic staff, but they are painting targets on their backs by constantly demonizing the senior diplomatic staff in Ottawa, the Indian diplomatic staff. They are painting targets in their back, because any of these Khalistanis, any of these criminal gangs, and those gangs are running rampant in Canada, I can assure you, they can start targeting the diplomatic staff, or whatever remains of the diplomatic staff now. That's issue number two. Number three, and we have to take this very strongly, that the real issue is not about Nijar or Pannu, sir. The real issue is the fact that you are indirectly contributing to causing unrest in Punjab. That is the real issue we should hammer about, we should go hammer and tongs about when we are dealing with such governments. And it follows the logic that a terrorist is a terrorist anywhere in the world according to international law. It doesn't matter whether he is in a white is right country like Canada, or whether he is anywhere or in Pakistan. The fact of the matter is, a terrorist is a terrorist. Nijar was a terrorist. Pannu is a terrorist. No questions about that. Now let's talk of the real issue. The real issue is that you are supporting, you are giving all aid, you are championing the cause of these separatists who are out to dismember India. And then the last issue which we need to focus upon, but this is again a very, very important issue, is that indirectly, or actually whether willingly or unwillingly, you are actually radicalizing the Sikh community in Canada by all these activities, by not even counseling them, by not even telling them that they might be on the wrong path. Not the entire Sikh community, but certainly members of this Khalistani faction among the Sikh community. Instead of counseling them that they are doing wrong things, that they are advocating a wrong path or taking up wrong causes, you are actually encouraging them. You are championing their causes. And worse, what you're also doing is that there's a very sizable Hindu community in Canada also. You're making them insecure by the day. That is what you are doing. So the Indian government also needs to retool. I think we in the Indian media, among the podcasters, also need to retool and turn and flip this narrative over and talk about the real issue. And the real issue are the championing of the cause of the separatists, of the splitists. There's a very interesting word called splitists. This is the cause which these people are championing. Why are you doing that? Now you are answerable to us, not that we are answerable to you. Turn the narrative of these white supremacists, of these people who want to browbeat India, who are extremely envious of India's progress on the global stage. We have to turn the narrative completely over. And finally, I will leave you with this. Unfortunately, when all this we can understand, we can discuss all these matters, but at the end of the day, there is still the enemy within. There are still forces within who take up cudgels on behalf of these very people, these white is right kind of people. And who are these people? I will take names today. Look at the tweets which they have given. Look at some of the commentary which they have given after this affair again resurfaced. Sagarika Ghosh, Channi, Saket Gokhale, so many other people from the Congress party. What are you really up to? Are you Indian citizens, or are you people out there championing the cause of these Justin Trudeaus of the world? Arfa Khanum in The Wire, I mean, she actually did a program, and I couldn't watch more than 10 minutes of that utter nonsense, where she was actually, jumping over a seat saying, oh, Amit Shah has been named by these people in Canada, he must be investigated, something to that effect. This is the problem in our country, that we have these kind of people, individuals and forces in our country who have taken, I think, complete leave of their senses. They don't even understand what it really means to be patriotic, what it really means to stand by the country and defend the right things in the country, and point fingers actually at what this entire rubbish and nonsense which is going on from parts of the Western world, especially the white is right kind of countries. And so on this note, I come to the end of this particular podcast. I hope you really enjoyed it. Thanks for watching this particular show. Until next time, it's goodbye and cheers from my end.